Well, there go my plans for the new year. Hey there, today I have an unboxing video, and in this video I'm going to open up an order of comic books that I won at auction through Quality Comix on HipComic. Now, certainly looking back over the last few months when I was dealing with third-party pressers and, maybe my grand ideas or my grand plan or scheme for things, I really thought that I was onto something, and there's a lot of, I guess, sort of like in a retrospective sort of format, not necessarily regrets, but just if I could think back to how I was approaching comic book collecting and buying towards the end of 2022, along with kind of the plans that I had and just sort of thinking about what I wanted to do, I definitely feel like my decision or my change of direction or change, altering my course, if you will, with comic book pressing, it didn't quite align with my plans towards the end of the year in terms of what I was buying. So let me explain that. Really what I thought of doing it kind of in a very simple fashion was try to find the best deals on raw books that I believed were in a certain condition that could be improved by a very straightforward and decent cleaning and pressing. And I was finding a lot of these books based on scans on HipComic where the books in particular, frankly, they just looked dirty. So maybe I saw some light creasing, dirt on the back cover, and I was bidding on these every week, sometimes even twice a week, as Quality Comix would run auctions, and I think they would end Thursday and Sunday. And I was targeting very specific books that I felt like did not have a lot of color breaking defects to them, where I would essentially classify these books somewhere in the 8.0 to 9.4 range. So I was targeting that range, and I was paying, I believe, well under fair market value. And my sort of evil plan was to acquire these books, find some reliable third-party pressers who offered dry cleaning services, and take sort of the best of the best out of these auction winnings and send them off to third-party pressers to let them work on the books and hopefully improve them and send them off to CGC for me. So, trying to find, let's say, a raw book in a 9.0 condition, some time is spent with the presser, there's a little bit of CPR, and maybe it comes back from CGC in a 9.4, 9.6, or even possibly a 9.8 range. Now, that could have been some naiveness on my part, that's literally impossible to do, but it was just something that I was willing to try, and phase one of that was really identifying those third-party pressers. Now, if you've watched some of my more recent videos, you can definitely see where I was disappointed, but also my expectations were essentially just too high. It's not to say that it's impossible to achieve that, but the course correction that I'm making is that I'm going to work on these books myself. So some of the, again, not regrets, but some of my, I don't know, maybe, let's just say that the judgment or the decisions that I made to sort of time the different phases of this plan kind of got out of order. And what I mean is what I should have done is found the pressers first and then purchased the books. And what I ended up doing is I was purchasing while I was evaluating. And that just caused me to basically have this backlog of books that really do need to be worked on. So in this video, I'm going to go through the comics that I won at auction from Quality Comix. And with all of these unboxing videos, or maybe not all, I shouldn't say all, but the general goal in the back of my mind is to find maybe the one book, or if there's two or three, just find and prioritize the books that I want to work on. So I'm looking for minimal to no color breaking spine ticks, sharp corners, or maybe with some acceptable softening. Creasing on the cover is fine, dirt on the back is fine. and find those candidates that really would benefit from a legitimate clean and press. And we're going to start with this unboxing to see if we can find some of those books. All right, now here we go. This is the order of books that I got from Quality Comics. So let's get these comics out of the box. Okay, the comics are out. I couldn't really figure out where the tape began and end, so at some point I'm like trying to delicately open this thing, and then once I saw there was a backing board, I just started swiping with my box cutter just to get this open. A little info card from Quality Comics here. You can check them out, qualitycomics.com. It says you can earn points with every order. I don't know how it works with HipComic, but I've noticed that there are, even Mile High Comics has like a HipComic account, and I always kind of wonder why some of these more well-known online stores have different storefronts on eBay and HipComic and all over the place. Like, I don't know, just if you market yourselves well enough, you should be able to drive enough traffic without using these other services. But nonetheless, I'm happy they're on HipComic because I've been able to win many of their auctions. Hopefully these are of quality, and you can see it's a pretty nice stack of books here. So I'm going to rip through these, and then I'll show you what I ended up getting each of these books for at auction. So the first book is Saga of the Swamp Thing, number 21. Again, moving in the right direction with that DC horror. Not quite into full DC Bronze Age horror with this one, but going back and picking up the original Swamp Thing books plus Saga of the Swamp Thing. Here is Identity Crisis number 4. Just a wonderful Michael Turner cover here with Wonder Woman coming out of the shadows here on issue 4 of Identity Crisis. Next is Ghost Rider number 2. I pick up this book every so often. It is considered to be a key issue in the Ghost Rider storyline. And with these, there were scans of every book. So I was able to go through as best I could through the scan and kind of assess the condition and the grade and took a chance. Next up is Sandman 43. Would love to have a full run of Sandman down the road if possible. Marvel Tales 226. Would have looked great with that great Todd McFarlane signature, maybe right across here, but too little too late, I guess. This was definitely one of those, I believe, that needed a little bit of a clean and press. Let me just open this, and I'll kind of show you an example here. And I would say maybe this is typical of the kind of condition of a book I was seeing. And I think I did end up going after a book like this because it was a newsstand copy. It does have a few spine ticks. It has a stacking crease. You can see there it's curling, so it would need to be pressed out. Definitely in the trade itself, in the lettering, it's not super bright white. It's just dull. Would love to brighten it up with just a very simple dry cleaning and erasing possibly. And then on the back, you can kind of see here, hopefully, that's just, I would say it's typical. It's the probably common thing I see on scans of books from HipComic. Not sure what to do, if those are ink smudges or what, or if it's just additional dirt. And again, more creasing and folding just back and forth here and there. A little bit of either some discoloration or snot, or I don't know what that is. But I noticed this on a lot of the backs of the comics, that it's just not as clean and bright as you would think. And you know, let's look at the, I forgot to look at the page quality. Page quality looks okay. You know, it doesn't look too terrible. I'd say it's definitely off-white to white at worst, but could have a shot at white pages. You know, and just taking a chance on these, trying to win them for as little as possible. And what I would do is I would set my targets for these bids where, you know, if I were to stick to my plan and I were to invest additional money into the comic book to have it professionally cleaned and pressed, I wanted to factor that in terms of what I was bidding. So I'll show you what I paid for at the end, but for example, that Marvel Tales 226, I ended up winning it for $2.29. You know, I don't believe it's a 9.8 because of those, I think I'm counting maybe, there's 5 significant color breaking spine ticks, plus the corner down there is not all that sharp. So, maybe this maxes even with a clean and press at an 8 or an 8.5. But this would be a great book to practice myself on. I mean, you could see it even in Spider-Man's eyes. There's just some dirt around there that would love to take an eraser to just to see if I could get it out. So those were the kind of books and the kind of prices that I was looking for. And I'm still happy to have them. It's just now I have to think, do I want to spend the time on these books other than practicing? Which books am I really going to invest my own personal time in? Speaking of personal time, this is Tomb Raider number 43, where it seems like Lara is off to Ireland, and she says to pack appropriately, so she is fully packed. And a great Adam Hughes cover here from Top Cow via Image Comics. So I'm an Adam Hughes fan, as most comic book collectors are, and saw this one they had available. And this isn't something that I really thought needed a clean impress. This looks very, very sharp up and down the spine here. I don't see really much of anything to do with this one. So this looks to be, at least a near mint candidate, if not a 9.8 candidate. And then along with Tomb Raider 43, while Lara is in Ireland, the story continues, Tower of Souls Part 2 of 2 in Tomb Raider 44. And it looks here that Lara is unpacked. Next is Hawkeye number 1. This looked to be a super sharp, strong copy. Maybe just a little bit of color smudging there. But again, the Marvel Tales one maybe was a bad example because I felt like that was a newsstand and I had to get it for a couple of dollars. But this is probably more typical of the book quality that I would win. Like you could see up there in the corner, if the corner is well put together, everything looks sharp. I don't see any tears or anything, but maybe there's just some general surface wear or maybe some blemish there that, I could attempt to get out. These are the books that I was targeting, and I was willing to pay a little bit for them, and I was pre-screening them myself through the scan and kind of putting a range. So like a book like this, I would say, it was within like a 9.0 to 9.4 range. And I would go into my spreadsheet and I would plug in those grades, and out of that range, it would kind of give me like an average CGC value. And then what I ended up doing is working off of that CGC value, where I went backwards and I subtracted the presser's fees, the CGC fees, some shipping fees back and forth. And it left me with a sort of reasonable bid, which, if a book like this ends up being a 9.6 or a 9.8, then the reasonable bid is crazy good. But like a book like this, I ended up picking up for $5.51. So I think that was a really good buy for about $5 in this condition that, according to the front cover, I think it really needs minimal work. So that's great. Next is Tomb of Dracula number 7. And a lot of these books show up on Quality Comix. A lot of them are in horrible shape. And I think what they end up doing is they either are buying collections or they've got long boxes or something to go through, and they end up just putting the book down, photographing it. Next, they probably have an assistant or somebody doing this on their behalf that isn't really so much concerned with condition or anything, because if somebody handed me this book and it's like, do we really want to sell this? It's in pretty good shape. Yep. Okay. So this book would sit right next to a book that may be like a 2.0. And the condition or the grade or any sort of pre-screen or indication of a grade range is just not there with Quality Comix. So you have to spend the time looking at the scans yourself and kind of doing a quick assessment. And by quick, I mean you really have to go through and just kind of eyeball it as best you can. You can't spend hours and hours looking at scans. And so that's why I kind of give it a range. Now, I don't remember the range that I gave this, but it was probably like an 8.0 to a 9.0 type range. The spine in particular is really dirty. I can see it right there. So I'm sure the back is equally as bad. But I didn't see very many color breaking spine ticks, and I still don't. I see one hairline tick right there. And then again, the corner looks really, really good. That one looks okay, not bad. But it's completely intact. No writing on the cover. It's a great 20-cent cover. I mean, it's a single-digit Tomb of Dracula. It's perfect for me right now. These are the kind of books that I'm getting into in this new year. So I'm going to be very aggressive with these. And I really felt like if the spine and the back could get a proper cleaning, this has a really good chance of potentially even being like a 9 or a 9.2. I thought that was the range that I gave it. And these were a little bit more expensive. I think there were a few other folks bidding on this that saw that, I would say, not that these are diamonds in the rough, but, one out of every 20 books like this, you see and go, I don't see much wrong with it. And then you have to kind of strike. Here's another one, Tomb of Dracula, number 9. Now, I would say this looks even dirtier than number 7. Also has a bit of a stacking crease and curling happening here. You can see here along the spine, it's that could be foxing now, which may not be able to come out. But, in its current shape, I mean, what kind of grade are you giving a book like this? If I go ahead and take it out of the bag and board and show you quickly kind of what the back looks like, with when you've got, some discoloring, let's just put it that way. There's something happening to the top. Is it stained? Is it foxing? It's foxing, I think, all up and down the spine there. So like, what real improvement could you do to this? I don't think this book is a 6.0. I mean, look at the edges. The edges are super sharp here along the pages. That looks, looks really great if you're looking at this side of the book. This side of the book, obviously bad with the foxing, but there are no spine ticks, right? There are some, again, it's just along the edges there, right here. I would say there's just maybe like an 1/8 to a 1/16 of an inch tearing just slightly right down in here. Definitely some dirt. So if the foxing and the dirt isn't there and everything else is bright white, is it a 9, 9.2? In that 8.5 to 9.2 ballpark is kind of what I'm thinking. And then with the discoloration, the foxing, the dirt on the back, that's where I'm probably dropping it a grade. So thinking like a 7, 7.5. Maybe it's a 7 because it's creased, and even just a general quick press in a basic dry cleaning, maybe we get it into the 7.5. I'll be honest, the cover is pretty bad in terms of the spine and the foxing wrapping around to the front. So that's where I'm leaning towards 7 just because of the presentation being what it is. But again, you're talking about very, very pricey Marvel Bronze Age from the early 70s, where I was not paying fair market value for 9.4s or even 9.0s, I believe. All right, jumping back into the 90s, we have Rogue number 1. This is Rogue's first solo series. Great cover by the late, great Mike Wieringo. And although in the scan the book looked, maybe like a 9.8 candidate, I am seeing a little bit of a crease or color break problem down there right in the circular area out of that sunburst. So we'll see. Could end up being 9.2 or 9.4 on that one. Next book up is Teen Titans number 8. This is the first cameo appearance of Rose Wilson as Ravager. So there's a few issues here where she becomes Ravager in different appearances. First cameo, first full, and then first cover. So this is the first cameo. Looked to be just a book that was kind of slipping through the cracks in this auction, so I grabbed it for $1. All right, and then these will kind of do together. I got, I believe, a full run of Star Wars Crimson Empire. So this is issues 1 through 6 of the full set. And if you're really, really deep into Star Wars comics lore, there are some first appearances in here, although most Star Wars books, there are first appearances. But I've got a full set here. I really, really like going back and picking up Star Wars Dark Horse when they're in good condition, because I believe that for a good while, Star Wars was not really considered collectible in terms of comic book collecting. So a lot of these sat in dollar bins without bags and boards, and they're pretty beat up. Sort of the combination of Star Wars and Dark Horse, it just didn't fare very well. And now that all Star Wars comics are considered to be collectible, although you could argue still that there are many people that don't believe in Star Wars comics at all, but you have to admit there's some collectability with them, as I do, and I collect them. And I love picking up any of these Star Wars Dark Horse books, and all of these look to be in great shape. Again, I put in a range 9.2 to 9.6. I don't think on any of them I really put a 9.8. So I figured in a 9.2, 9.6, what would be a fair price and fair bid for these, and ended up getting them each for a couple bucks. Another Star Wars Dark Horse book. This is Star Wars Darth Maul number 4 of 4. Again, just looking at the condition of the book, I thought it was in really, really good shape. Gave all of these sort of that 9.2 to 9.6 range when I decided to put in my bids. All right, got a few more to go. This is Spider-Woman number 4. Again, spine looked to be just great, really, really nice. I didn't see much wrong with it in the scan. I don't see much wrong with it here in person, so that's a good sign. Great Dave Cockrum cover here with Spider-Woman on the ropes fighting the Brothers Grimm. The only weird thing with this comic is I swear like 6 auctions in a row, there was Spider-Woman number 4. And I'm like, I didn't know why they had Spider-Woman 4 in high grade over and over and over, but they did, and I ended up picking up a copy. All right, 2 left. Another 20 center. This one is Vault of Evil number 6. Definitely has stacking crease that would need to be pressed out. But again, this is the book exactly that I was targeting. If we look at the spine, it's super, super clean. No color breaks whatsoever. Now, the corner has just a touch there of softening. Probably now borderline 9.6, 9.8. That corner looks really strong. And then if there's anything wrong with the back in terms of dirt, obviously we're coming off the 9.8 at that point. But, again, this is the kind of book that I want to learn to, I don't want to say fix because I don't think there's a lot that this book needs, but just a finalization. I don't know how to say it, but you're kind of going through your final pass where you're giving it a nice dry clean. You're making sure that the letters in the trade really pop, although this is a pretty strong copy on its own. Get rid of the stacking crease, make sure it's just nice and tidy and looking as best as it possibly can before grading. One thing I did notice, possible that's a color break right there. So that's something that I might have missed, and that probably puts it in the 9.4 space. I don't know if that's art or not. I'll have to double check and see when I take the book out of the bag. One little hairline tick. Again, the more that you look at the book, the more things that you'll find with it. Although it's really hard to see right there. It's so tiny. But anyway, 9.4 basically. But again, you're talking about, I'm literally splitting hairs between 9.2, 9.4, 9.6 of an early 70s Marvel Bronze Age book. So to be able to get this in high grade like that is tremendous. Now, the last book was interesting because this was not something on my radar. I didn't really know much about this, and this is Star Wars Darth Maul, Son of Dathomir, number 1. And it is a Diamond Retailer Summit. And it was something that, again, the seller had a few of these and ended up, Quality Comix ended up posting one at a time over a series of a few auctions. And I thought I would take a chance. It was listed as a 9.4 in near mint. And I can see there is a color break right there. And then the corner also as well has a little bit of a color issue. It's possible this corner as well has something going on. So I think 9.4 was definitely a fair grade. And not that this book is considered to be super rare. There are copies available on eBay and other places if you search. And I did pay quite a bit for it, way more than, if I'm talking about $1 here, $2 here, $5 here for some of these books. I don't know exactly why. I don't know if I would do that again and pay that much for it. I was kind of caught up in thinking that it was sort of a rare hidden gem. We'll see when I run the numbers here, just how I did. If that book does end up being a 9.4, it could be a 9.6. It's not a 9.8. And I think that, again, the seller was simply putting that 9.4 on there to tell you, like, it's not a 9.8 if that's what you're looking for. So really, really great books. I think this was my first significant auction win from Quality Comix. So let me show you what I paid for each of these and kind of compare the cost to acquire these books against fair market value and the values of the books if I were to send them in for professional grading. All right, here are the order details from the auctions that I won from Quality Comix back on December 1st, 2022. My total invoice was $208.90. I paid $15.25 shipping and no tax to acquire these books. So what I like to do is distribute any shipping or other fees across the cost to acquire each book so that I know truly what it cost me to buy each individual book. And if my math is right, when the total cost is summarized, the total cost down here at $208.90 matches the $208.90 on the invoice. Now, what I like to do is just compare the total cost here in column Z against the raw value so that I can assess whether or not I added any value from a raw book perspective to my collection. Most of them I got for under fair market value. I see one here that I might have overpaid a little bit for, but pretty strong numbers if you look at this under column U. We're talking about $56 here, $29 here, $63, $25, $72 for that Darth Maul, Son of Dathomir, the Diamond Retailers variant, where I paid $50 for it, which I know was a lot, but again, I was running the numbers and I was looking at fair market value and I was looking at graded copies, and I was like, I think I can get this for essentially half price if I was looking at a CGC 9.4. Now, do I want that book graded, and would it be a very important part of my collection? I don't know, but it's what I paid for, and just trying to be transparent and showing you what things cost. I might have reached, and again, there were additional copies that I did not bid on in auctions after this one, and they all sold around $50. So it was kind of what the going rate was if you wanted a copy. So this was a huge chunk. It was essentially 25% of the order just in this one book, but even from a fair market value perspective, it still looked like I got it at a nice discount. Now, remember, the cover price fair market value that I'm using, I always kind of cringe a little bit at this because I don't believe in its accuracy anymore. So if you say, well, if you don't believe in it, why do you use it? Because it's really the only game in town as far as assessing raw book value. So if we're looking at Hawkeye #1, cover price is claiming that that is a $36 book, and I was able to acquire it for $6.20 for a value add of almost $30 off that book. Now, in other conditions, I think it's around 14 or 18. Still a nice book, a great cover. I love the condition that it appears that I got the book in, so I'm really, really happy about it. I'm kind of rolling my eyes a little bit on the fair market value, so please understand, I don't make these numbers up. It's what cover price is actually reporting on them. Same thing with Crimson Empire #1. Cover price is stating that that book is $56 in a raw near mint copy. I spent $8.68 to get it for a value add of $47.32. And here I got the rest of Crimson Empire, $294, $291, $350, $294, and $370. So really overall, didn't really pay too much to get all 6 issues in the set. So down the road, if I wanted to package the 6 books together, I've got them as a complete set. The Tomb of Dracula books, Tomb of Dracula 7, I spent $22.71 to pick up that book. It has a $90 fair market value. So that was the biggest winner in terms of adding value to my collection with raw books at a $67.29 ad. And then Tomb of Dracula 9, I spent $20. That has a fair market value of $61 for a value add of $41. The negative one that is catching my eye here is Tomb Raider 44. It's one of those where I paid $12.78 to get Tomb Raider 43. It had a fair market value of $25, and then they happened to have Tomb Raider 44, and this happens a lot. Again, I like to think that I'm prepared, but I still get caught up in auctions, and you're like, well, if 43 has that value, 44 must also have that value, right? And it did not. It was only worth $9, and I paid $12.78 for it. I do believe both of those copies are at least 9.4 candidates, if not 9.6 or 9.8. And it's one of those where Adam Hughes is always valuable. His cover art is always recognizable. And there are pockets of collectors within the collector community where they will collect certain cover colors, certain cover artists, certain styles of covers, original cover price, like I am focusing on 20-cent covers. And there are many, many Adam Hughes cover collectors, really regardless of the title. So I always feel like that's a strong investment because there's always going to be that demand for his books. I'm really reaching to justify a $3.78 loss, but nevertheless, that was my one loss for the order. Again, the Marvel Tales, $2.98 for a $13 fair market value book. That copy's pretty beat up, but it's a newsstand copy. It's Marvel Tales. It's McFarlane. I took a shot at it. And then the last one I wanted to point out, Swamp Thing 21. This was another one that, along with Spider-Woman number 4, that they seem to have several copies of. They didn't put all of the copies in one auction. They kind of spread it out across 3 or 4 auctions. Swamp Thing 21. I spent $16.19 to acquire that book. It has a $63 fair market value. And there is that Spider-Woman number 4. I spent $4.44. It has a $10 fair market value. Now, that's just from a raw book perspective. And if I summarize the raw value, this set of books that I won at auction was a $392.10 value add into my collection. So an extremely positive set of books that I won at auction here. But let's take a look and see, if I were to get these books graded, what is their potential if they were professionally graded by CGC. And I like to think I was targeting near mint for all of these books, so let me go ahead and plug in the 9.4 and see if any of these books have value in a 9.4. And 3 of them pop up as they've crossed over the $100 mark, and that's Vault of Evil number 6 that I paid a little under $5 to acquire, and then the 2 Tomb of Dracula books. Tomb of Dracula 7 at $177.67 and Tomb of Dracula 9 at $127. So lots of good potential there if those books could be cleaned up by, I want to say by somebody or by some third party, but I know now that this has to be me. If I want to improve the condition of these books, I'm going to have to do it myself. Swamp Thing 21 at a 9.4, $77. Crimson Empire number 1 at almost $80 in a 9.4. So definitely some value in a 9.4. Not all of them have any real significant value or any value at all in a 9.4. Sandman 43, for example, doesn't have any value. So it maybe a little over half of these, or 2/3, have some value in a 9.4. And the ones that don't, it was really the chance to get them up into the 9.8 range. You know, if you're looking at something like Identity Crisis, has a fair market value of $18, in a 9.4 it's 16. It's considered to be a modern book released in 2004, so really it's kind of 9.8 or bust on a book like that. Same thing with the Tomb Raiders, also released in 2004. You're really looking for a 9.8 in these. The 9.4s don't have a lot of value. It's kind of nice to see Tomb Raider 43 having $40 in case that it doesn't work out. And again, look at the 2014 Darth Maul, Son of Dathomir, has no value in a 9.4. Hopefully, I'm sure it has some, but maybe there just aren't that many graded copies that have sold. So let's see if these books have any value in a 9.8. But if I were just to send these books off to CGC and they were all hitting a 9.4, which is doesn't quite align with my strategy when I'm purchasing near mint books from other online retailers. I'm just sort of guessing based on the screenshot and saying it could be a 9.4, it could be in the range of near mint. You know, I would definitely say that these books have the Mile High Comics near mint, which Mile High Comics says their range for a near mint book is 8.5 to 10.0, right? So I feel like, yep, I could make the argument that those Tomb of Dracula books could be 8.5. I think the one with quite a bit of foxing is probably not quite 8.5, but could it get into the Mile High Comics 9.4? Possibly. And what's interesting here is the CGC value is actually less than the raw value add of 322.63. And I think that, again, that Darth Maul book is kind of messing with some of these numbers here. So let's flip these to 9.8 and see what the ultimate potential for these books were, because I'm looking for books that have that potential value in a 9.8, set the bar high, and then I kind of work back from that to see where my values are. And here's where the numbers get really sick and crazy. We've got Crimson Empire number 1 at a 9.8, reported at almost $404. The other Crimson Empire books also strong in a 9.8. Here's where those Tomb Raiders start to pay off a little bit. They're both up over 100. So even though the FMV between 43 and 44 is different, the 9.8 is only $4 apart. Spider-Woman number 4 over $100. And then here we go. Here's where that value kicks in for Son of Dathomir number 1, the Diamond Select variant, $285 in a 9.8. I believe that the 3 issues that I saw on the book probably don't allow for it to get a 9.8. Could be in the 9.6 range, hopefully not a 9.4. but still tremendous ceiling here on a book like that. Even Sandman 43, 50 cents under 100 for a minimal investment of $3.20. Marvel Tales, I know that's not going to get a 9.8, but again, just looking at where the book could go to just kind of see what that max range is, that ceiling. I like to really understand that. It helps me understand what I'm bidding on. $180 if you can find that book in a newsstand in a 9.8. And then hopping back down to these Tomb of Dracula books, Tomb of Dracula 7 in a 9.8, we're talking $500. And then again, just like the Tomb Raider books, the Tomb of Dracula ends up flipping where Tomb of Dracula 9 in a 9.8 is currently more valuable than the 7 at $720. Even Teen Titans 8, $135 for that book in a 9.8, and I spent $2.23 to acquire it. So lots of really, really strong values here, even in this market, where the total CGC value of this order in a 9.8 is $3,412.36. Again, I do not believe that all of these books will get a 9.8. A lot of this is just for fun, just for me to kind of see again, like, I need to work with these ranges to really understand if this is a book worth acquiring. When you kind of take a step back and you're looking at the values and the conditions, you're starting to really hone in and look at the book. You're holding it up close. You've got a magnifying glass. You've got additional lighting that's helping you really, really assess the condition. And you're starting to really dig into the numbers to assess the grade and assess the value in that grade. That's a different process. That's like not anything that I record here because it would be extremely tedious and boring to actually watch me do that, but that's what I end up doing. That's sort of my third phase. So the first phase is quick assessment, make the bid, acquire the book. You can't add any value to your collection unless you take possession of the collectible. So my first phase is, you know what? I'm making an educated guess here to say this is a book worth acquiring because of that potential. So that's why I flip all those grades to 9.8. I want to see, what is my potential? What if I'm wrong? What if there was something on the camera that looked like a spine tick and it wasn't there, right? It does have the potential to be a 9.8. I know sometimes that's just wishful thinking, but what kind of range am I working with so that I can make the gamble? But I want to make an informed an educated gamble if possible, and that's sort of the phase one. Second phase is kind of what we went through here. It's the unboxing. It's the general assessment of the condition. Would I buy from this seller again? Let's look at the numbers. What are my general fair market values? Is this a healthy order? And I would say yes, it is. These are very collectible, valuable books. And then in a third phase, that's where I'm really scrutinizing the condition and cataloging these once and for all at the specific grades that I assign to them. And then hopefully I'll be able to pick and choose a couple of these books to actually clean and press myself, because that's what I'm looking for going forward, is to go through here. And I think I have a few candidates, really strong candidates. That Vault of Evil book looks like a good one for me to go ahead and just give it what I would consider to be a general dry cleaning and a nice press just to work out that last stack increase. And that could be a very nice 20-cent Bronze Age book that I could get slabbed in an extremely high grade. And an extremely meaning it could be anywhere from a 9.4, 9.6, possibly a 9.8 if it didn't have that dog ear color break. I'll check and see if that's art. But I think there are some candidates in here for me to work on and try and improve. Thanks for watching. Happy collecting, and see you next time.